Everyone looked down on her for being in a wheelchair. Then they offered her to a poor farmhand, and everything changed. Emily Thompson never imagined that one day she would be treated like a worthless object, offered to the first man who wouldn't shy away from her condition. The daughter of the biggest farmer in the Savannah region of Georgia had become a burden to her own family after the accident that left her in a wheelchair 2 years earlier. That's exactly what happened on that Sunday afternoon, when her father, Richard Thompson, decided to gather all the single and widowed men from the area on the porch of the century-old farm. The proposal was simple and humiliating. Whoever married Emily would receive half the lands of St. Benedict Farm. My daughter is only 23 years old. She's beautiful and well-mannered. Any real man will recognize her worth, announced Richard to the 5 suitors who had accepted the invitation. Emily remained silent in her wheelchair, watching the men's embarrassed looks. She had known all of them since childhood. Robert Palmer, owner of the neighboring farm, looked at the ground, avoiding her gaze. Mark Wilson, a city merchant, nervously fidgeted with the hat in his hands. The other 3 muttered quietly among themselves, as if she weren't present. "Mr. Richard, with all due respect, but I already have my commitments," murmured Robert, rising from his chair. "I need to tend to my property." "Me too, Mr. Richard. My store needs more attention," added Mark, following the first one's example. One by one, all the suitors found excuses to leave. Emily felt her face burn with humiliation. It wasn't the first time she had gone through this, but never in such a public and embarrassing way. Her father stood still, watching the men walk away down the dirt road leading to the farm's main gate. "Father, please stop this," whispered Emily, trying to hold back the tears that insisted on coming. Richard didn't answer. His fists were clenched and his face red with anger. The humiliation had been complete. In the small town of Riverside, rural district of Savannah, the news would already be spreading by word of mouth before nightfall. It was then that he saw Jack Miller approaching from the side of the house, returning from the corral where he had spent the afternoon tending to the horses. The 28-year-old had worked on the farm for 4 years, ever since he arrived in the area from rural Louisiana looking for work. He was considered the best animal handler Richard had ever known. "Jack!" called the farmer, his voice still trembling with indignation. The farmhand stopped and took off his hat, as he always did when the boss addressed him. His dark hair was stuck to his forehead with sweat from work. He wore his usual beige shirt, with sleeves rolled up to the elbows and work pants covered in dust. "Yes, Mr. Richard. Did something happen?" asked Jack, noticing the tension in the air. Emily watched her father approach the employee with determined steps. She recognized that resolute look and knew he was about to do something impulsive. "You're a man of your word, aren't you, Jack?" asked Richard, stopping right in front of the farmhand. "I've always tried to be, boss." "And hard-working. You've never given me any trouble in these 4 years." "I do my job right, yes, sir." Emily felt a chill in her stomach. She sensed what was coming and wanted to scream, but the words stuck in her throat. "Then I have a proposal for you," said Richard, putting his hand on Jack's shoulder. "Marry my daughter, and I'll give you half the lands of this farm." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Jack looked at Emily, who had lowered her head, unable to face him. The farmhand saw the tears she was trying to hide, and felt a pain in his chest that he couldn't explain. During all those years working on the farm, he had noticed Emily many times. Before the accident, she used to ride through the property and always greeted the employees with a genuine smile. After the tragedy, she had become a rare presence, appearing only occasionally on the porch of the main house. "Mr. Richard," began Jack, still processing the proposal. "It's yes or no, boy. No need to think too much. It's a good opportunity for you." Emily lifted her eyes and met Jack's gaze fixed on her. There was no pity or rejection in his dark eyes. There was something different, something she couldn't decipher at that moment. "I accept," said Jack, surprising everyone, including himself. Emily widened her eyes. She hadn't expected that answer. She expected another rejection, another humiliation to add to the collection she had been accumulating since the accident. "But I have one condition," added the farmhand, taking his hat off his head and holding it with both hands. "What condition?" asked Richard, suspicious. I want to talk with Mrs. Emily first. Alone. Richard looked at his daughter, then at the employee. It wasn't the kind of condition he expected, but he nodded. All right, but don't take too long. I want to settle this today. The farmer went into the house, leaving Emily and Jack alone on the porch. The sun was beginning to set behind the mountains, tinting the sky orange and pink. The gentle breeze swayed the leaves of the yellow ipe trees that decorated the front garden of the house. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Why did you accept? Asked Emily, her voice almost a whisper. Jack approached slowly and sat on the low wall of the porch, coming to eye level with her. He placed his hat on his lap and took a deep breath before answering. Because I saw how the other men looked at you, and I didn't like it. You don't know me. We've barely spoken all these years. That's true, but I've been watching you, and I know you don't deserve to be treated like a burden nobody wants to carry. Emily felt a lump in her throat. No one had spoken to her so directly about her situation since the accident. You know that I can't, she began, but couldn't finish the sentence. I know about your condition, yes, and that doesn't scare me. But why? Everyone runs away from me as if I were contagious. Jack remained silent for a moment, watching the mountains in the distance. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with an old sadness. Because I've taken care of someone like that before. My younger sister, Lucy. She was born with spinal problems, used a wheelchair her whole life. Emily looked at him with renewed attention. It was the first time someone mentioned experience with disability without making it seem like an impossible burden to carry. Where is she now? She passed away 5 years ago. Her heart couldn't withstand a surgery we tried to do to help her. I'm sorry, said Emily, and she truly meant it. There was genuine sincerity in her voice. She always told me she wanted the chance to be loved for who she was, not for what she couldn't do. I think you deserve the same chance. Emily felt tears welling up again, but this time they weren't from humiliation. It was something different, a mix of gratitude and surprise. But you don't love me, she said, trying to keep her feet on the ground of reality. No, not yet, but I don't see why I couldn't learn to love. If you give me that chance too. Jack's honesty was disconcerting. Emily was used to falseness and pity disguised as kindness. Here was a man talking to her as if she were a normal person, capable of building something real. And the lands? My father is offering half the farm. I've already spoken with him about that. I don't want the lands. Emily looked at him in astonishment. What do you mean, you don't want the lands? I didn't marry you for the lands. If it's going to happen, let it be, because we both choose to try. At that moment, Emily realized that perhaps Jack was the first person in a long time who saw her as a person, not as a problem to be solved or a burden to be carried. What do you expect from me? She asked. I hope you'll give me time, that we get to know each other for real, and that you stop seeing yourself as less valuable than any other woman. Emily's heart raced. It had been a long time since she had heard such kind and yet so direct words about her situation. And if it doesn't work out between us? Then we'll talk like adults and resolve it in the best way possible. But at least we will have tried honestly. Richard appeared at the door of the house, interrupting the conversation. So, have you reached a conclusion? Emily looked at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, Father. We're going to try. Great. I'll arrange the wedding for next week at the courthouse, no big party. Father, wait, Emily interjected. Jack said he doesn't want the lands. Richard's eyes widened. What do you mean he doesn't want the lands? That's right, Mr. Richard, Jack confirmed. I agree to marry your daughter, but I don't want anything in return. Son, have you lost your mind? I'm offering half of one of the largest farms in the region. And I appreciate the offer, but I prefer to build my life with my own work. Richard was speechless. In all his years as a farmer, he had never encountered anyone who would refuse such a generous offer. Well, if that's how you want it, he muttered, still not understanding the decision. But the wedding is still happening next week. That night, Emily lay in bed unable to sleep. Her mind wouldn't stop processing the day's events. In a few hours, Her life had taken a completely unexpected turn. She was engaged to a man she barely knew, but who had shown her more respect in one conversation than many people had in 2 years. On the other side of the property, in the small house where he had lived alone since arriving at the farm, Jack was also awake. He looked at the wooden ceiling and wondered if he had made the right decision. He hadn't lied to Emily about his intentions, but he hadn't told her the whole truth either. The truth was that he had been watching her for much longer than he had admitted. Before the accident, when she rode her chestnut horse through the pastures, he would often stop working just to watch her pass by. There was something about her joy, the way she greeted everyone with a genuine smile, that enchanted him. After the accident, he felt a strange pain in his chest every time he saw her secluded, sad, being treated by her own family as a nuisance. Jack knew what it was like to carry pain and guilt. He knew what it felt like to be invisible and worthless. That's why when he saw the humiliation she went through that afternoon, something inside him simply wouldn't allow him to remain silent. The following week passed quickly. The news of the impending marriage between the farmer's daughter and the farmhand spread through the region like wildfire. Opinions ranged from shock, pity, to malicious gossip. Mrs. Mary Baker, Jack's mother, who lived in a humble little house in town, almost fainted when her son showed up to tell her the news. "Jack, my son, have you lost your mind?" she said, crossing herself. "That rich girl will humiliate you. She doesn't know what it's like to work, what it's like to go without." "Mother, it's not like that. Emily is a good person." "A good person? Son, she's from another class. When she gets tired of playing around, she'll abandon you and go back to her easy life." "Her life isn't easy, Mother. You don't know what she's been through." Mrs. Mary shook her head, unconvinced. She was a 60-year-old woman who had raised 3 children alone after her husband abandoned them. She had greying hair always tied in a simple bun and calloused hands from working so much as a seamstress to support the family. "And you didn't even consult me before making this decision." "Mom, I'm 28 years old. I can decide my own life." "You can, but that doesn't mean you have to make stupid decisions." Jack sighed. He knew his mother was worried, but he also knew she didn't understand the whole situation. Meanwhile, in the big house on the farm, the tension was also palpable. Richard tried to appear satisfied with the events, but Emily sensed his unease. "Father, are you having regrets?" she asked during Thursday's dinner. "It's not regret, daughter. It's just that, well, I never imagined you would marry an employee. You were the one who offered it to him." "I did, yes, but I thought none of them would accept. I thought it was a way to show that you still have value." Emily let her fork drop onto the plate with a metallic clatter. "So you didn't expect it to work out? It was just to humiliate me a little more?" "No, daughter, that's not it." "Yes, it is, Father. You wanted to prove a point. That not even a poor farmhand wants me. Emily, you're being unfair." "Unfair? Father, you put me on display like I was livestock, and you say I'm being unfair?" Richard fell silent. He knew his daughter was right, but he couldn't admit that he had been cruel and hasty. "Jack is a good man," Emily continued, "and maybe he's the only person in this house who treats me like a person." "I treat you well. You treat me like a broken child who needs to be protected. It's not the same thing." That night, Emily asked to speak with Jack again. They met on the porch in the same spot where they had first talked as an engaged couple. "Are you afraid?" he asked, noticing the tension on her face. "I am. And you?" "Me too. I think it's normal." "Jack, I need to tell you some things before Saturday, things that might make you change your mind." "I'm listening." Emily took a deep breath. She had decided to be completely honest, even if it meant losing the only chance she had to start over. The accident wasn't exactly an accident. Jack leaned forward, giving her his full attention. "What do you mean?" "I was running away. I had argued with my father about the marriage he wanted to arrange for me with a farmer's son from Atlanta. I rode off in the middle of the night, with no direction, just wanting to get away from everything. That's when the horse got spooked by a snake and threw me into a ravine. Do you blame your father for the accident? For a long time, yes. But now I know it was my fault. If I had talked, instead of running away— Emily, you had the right not to want an arranged marriage. I did, but I ran away the wrong way. Jack was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Does this change anything between us?" she asked, fearing the answer. "It does. Now I understand why you're so afraid to trust me, but it doesn't change my decision." Emily felt a huge relief. There was one more confession to make, but she decided it could wait until after the wedding. Saturday dawned cloudy. Emily woke up with a knot in her stomach and the feeling that she was about to jump off a cliff without knowing if there was ground on the other side. Mrs. Martha, the only housekeeper who truly liked her, helped her dress for the ceremony. "Mrs. Emily, if I may offer an old woman's opinion, I think you're making the right choice." "Why do you say that, Mrs. Martha?" "Because in the 4 years that young man has worked here, I've never seen him disrespect anyone, and more importantly, I've never seen him look at you with pity. That's already a great start." Martha was a black woman in her early 50s who had worked on the farm since before Emily was born. She had lost 2 children when they were young and considered Emily the daughter she had left. Her opinion had always been important to the young woman. "Mrs. Martha, do you think it can work?" "My dear, marriage is like planting. If you sow with care and water it every day, it can bear good fruit. But if you neglect it, it withers and turns." The ceremony at the courthouse was simple and quick. Besides the couple, only Richard, Mrs. Mary, Mrs. Martha, and 2 required witnesses were present. The Justice of the Peace, Judge Frank, was an elderly man who had known the Thompson family for decades. "Jack Miller, do you take Emily Thompson to be your wife, to love and respect her in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, until death do you part?" "Yes, I do." "Emily Thompson, do you take Jack Miller to be your husband, to love and respect him in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, until death do you part?" Emily hesitated for a second that felt like an eternity. She looked at Jack, who held her hands firmly but without pressure. In his eyes, she saw patience and understanding. "Yes, I do." "Then, by the authority vested in me by law, I now pronounce you husband and wife." There were no kisses or applause, only an awkward silence broken by the sound of papers being signed. Emily was now Emily Miller. The name change seemed to symbolize a much bigger transformation in her life. The first surprise came when they arrived at the house where they would live. Jack had prepared everything to welcome his wife. The small 2-bedroom building, located at the back of the farm property, had been completely adapted. "You did all this in 1 week?" asked Emily, amazed. "I had help from the crew. Everyone pitched in." The house now had makeshift wooden ramps at all entrances. The bathroom had been modified to make wheelchair access easier, and the main bedroom had been moved to the ground floor. In fact, Jack had turned the old living room into the main bedroom, setting up a small space for himself in what used to be the 2nd bedroom. "You didn't have to sleep separately," said Emily, feeling she needed to clarify that point. "I know, but I thought it would be better for us to get to know each other first. I don't want you to feel pressured." Once again, Jack surprised her with his respect and patience. Emily was beginning to understand she had married a man very different from anyone she had known. The first week of marriage was strange for both of them. They had breakfast together, talked about the farm work and the day's tasks, had dinner at the small kitchen table, but there was still a formality between them that made everything feel artificial. Jack left early to work in the barn and only returned in the late afternoon. Emily spent her days reading, crocheting, and watching the farm routine from the window. It was a life very different from the one she had in the big house, but not necessarily worse. On Thursday of the 2nd week, she woke up to a strange noise coming from outside the house. When she looked out the bedroom window, she saw Jack building something in the backyard. "What are you doing?" she asked when he came in for lunch. "A better ramp for the back porch. The ones I made in a hurry weren't very good." "You don't have to do that. I want to. I want you to feel comfortable at home." The word home sounded strange to Emily's ears. It had been a long time since she felt she had a place she could truly call home. It was that same week that they received their first visitor. Mrs. Mary showed up on Thursday afternoon carrying a basket of homemade food. "I came to meet my daughter-in-law," she said, but her tone wasn't very friendly. Emily received her mother-in-law with all the politeness she had learned in her privileged upbringing, but quickly realized that Mrs. Mary was there to judge her, not to get to know her. "So you're the farmer's daughter," the woman said, sitting down in the living room chair without being invited. "I am, and you're Jack's mother. He speaks of you very fondly." "I hope so. I raised that boy practically alone after his father abandoned us." There was a hardness in Mrs. Mary's voice that made Emily uncomfortable. The woman looked around the house as if searching for flaws. "The house looks well kept," she commented, but her tone didn't sound like a compliment. "Jack did a wonderful job adapting everything. Indeed, my son has always been good at sacrificing himself for others." The words hit Emily like a slap. It was clear that Mrs. Mary saw her as a sacrifice her son was making, not as a choice. "Mrs. Mary, I didn't force Jack to marry me." "No, but he's very kind-hearted. He's always been like that since he was little. He helps everyone, even when he ends up worse off." Emily felt her face burn. Her mother-in-law was making her thoughts on the situation very clear. "Perhaps you don't know the whole story." "I know enough. I know you're from a rich family, and now my son will have to support you for the rest of his life." "I'm not a burden," Emily burst out, losing her patience. "No? Then explain to me what you do to help around the house. What do you contribute to this marriage besides causing trouble?" Mrs. Mary's words echoed in Emily's head all night. When Jack came home from work and saw his wife's sad face, he immediately realized something had happened. "My mother was here today, wasn't she?" he asked. "How did you know?" "By the way you look. Did she say something that hurt you?" Emily recounted the entire conversation. Jack sighed and sat down beside her on the couch. "My mother is a good person, but she's afraid. Afraid that I'll get hurt, that I'll be used." "And what if she's right? What if I really am a burden in your life?" Jack held Emily's face with both hands, forcing her to look him in the eyes. "Emily, I chose to be here. Nobody forced me. And if my mother can't understand that, that's her problem, not yours. But she's right about one thing. I don't contribute anything. You work all day and I stay here doing nothing useful. You just got married and completely changed your life. It's natural that you need time to adapt. It's not just that. I never learned how to be useful. I always had people doing everything for me." Jack stayed silent for a moment, thinking. "Do you want to learn?" he finally asked. "Learn what?" "To be useful, to contribute, to be part of real life instead of just watching." Emily's eyes shone. It was the first time in a long time that someone had offered her the chance to be active instead of passive. "Yes, I do. But what can I do?" "We'll figure it out together." The next morning, Jack woke up earlier than usual and prepared a special breakfast. When Emily woke up, he was sitting at the table with 2 notebooks and a pen in his hand. "What's this?" she asked, curious. "A project. Our project." He opened one of the notebooks and showed her various notes he had made during the night. "I've been thinking about what we talked about yesterday, and I had an idea." "What idea?" "You can read and write much better than I can. You know how to do math, you know administration, and I know how to work with animals and plants. Together we can start something of our own." "What do you mean, something of our own?" "A garden. Start small, plant vegetables, sell them at the town market. Over time, maybe expand." Emily looked at the notebook full of plans and drawings. Jack had spent hours thinking of a way to include her, to make her feel useful. "Do you think I can do it?" "In the wheelchair, I'm sure. In my mother's garden, when I was a child, I did a lot of work sitting on the ground, planting, harvesting, tending to the seedlings. You can do everything at the right height. And my father, what will he say about me working the land? Emily, this is our home now. The decisions are ours." The idea excited Emily in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Finally, someone was offering her an active role, a way to contribute and feel valued. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. They spent the whole morning planning. Jack sketched out the layout of the garden in the backyard, calculated which vegetables to plant first, and how much the seeds and necessary tools would cost. For Emily, it was like waking from a deep sleep. "When do we start?" she asked eagerly. "If you really want to, we can start today. I have some tools and can borrow a few from your father." "No, I want it to be just ours. Let's buy our own tools." "Emily, that will cost money we don't have to spare. I have some jewelry my grandmother gave me. I can sell it." Jack hesitated. He didn't feel comfortable with the idea of Emily selling her personal belongings to fund the project. "You don't have to do that. I can borrow from your father. Jack, you said the decisions here are ours. This is my decision. I want to invest in our future." The determination in Emily's voice convinced Jack. She needed to feel she was contributing in a real way, and maybe that was the right way to start. That very afternoon they went into town. Emily sold a gold necklace she had inherited from her grandmother, and with the money they bought seeds, adapted tools and materials to prepare the beds. The news that the farmer's daughter was working the land spread quickly through the small rural community. Reactions ranged from curiosity and shock to malicious comments. "That girl has really lost her mind," commented Mrs. Irene at the bakery. "A rich man's daughter working the land like a farmhand." "Poor thing. She must be trying to please her husband," replied Mrs. Rose. "He must have demanded she make herself useful." The comments reached Emily's ears through Mrs. Martha, who continued to visit her regularly. "Don't pay attention to the gossip, girl," said the former employee. "These people have nothing better to do than talk about others." "The gossip doesn't bother me, Mrs. Martha. For the first time in a long while, I'm feeling useful." And it was true. In the first days of working in the garden, Emily discovered a satisfaction she had never experienced before. Planting the seeds, watering the beds, watching the seedlings grow, all of it made sense in a way her former privileged life never had. Jack had built raised beds to make access easier for the wheelchair and created an irrigation system that allowed Emily to care for the plants independently. She woke up early along with him and spent the whole morning in the yard. "You look more beautiful," Jack remarked one evening, noticing his wife's rosy cheeks. "It's the sun. I was too pale from always being indoors." "It's not just the sun, you're more alive." Emily smiled. That was exactly how she felt. Alive. After 2 years of feeling like a ghost in her own life, she had finally found a purpose. The first real test of the project came 3 weeks later, when they harvested their first produce: lettuces, arugulas, radishes, and scallions. The quality was excellent, and they decided to take it all to sell at the Saturday market in town. "Are you sure you want to go?" asked Jack. "There will be a lot of people, and you know how the folks here are." "I'm sure. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." On Saturday morning, they loaded the neighbor's borrowed pickup truck with produce from the garden and headed to the market. Emily had prepared neat labels for each product and calculated the prices based on what other vendors charged. Their stall was small and simple, but organized. Emily was in charge of sales while Jack arranged the products on the counters. The first few hours were slow. People passed by, looked, but few stopped to buy. Emily noticed the curious glances and whispers, but kept her posture firm and a smile on her face. "Good morning, ma'am. Would you like to try our lettuce? It's fresh, we picked it this morning," she offered to every potential customer. It was around 10 o'clock when the first problem appeared. Marcus Andrews, son of the owner of the largest vegetable stall at the market, approached with a hostile air. "So you think you can show up here and steal our customers?" he said, loud enough for other vendors to hear. "We're not stealing anyone's customers," Emily replied calmly. "We're offering our products like anyone else." "Products? That's just rich people's playtime. You don't know what real work is." "Excuse me," Jack intervened, stepping between Marcus and Emily. "Do you have a problem with us being here?" "The problem is you're taking food out of the mouths of those who really need to work to live." A small crowd began to form around the stall. Emily felt her heart race, but didn't let fear take over. "Marcus," she said, her voice firm and clear. "I work in my garden every day. I wake up at 5 in the morning, I plant, I tend, I harvest. If that's not real work, then tell me what is. Real work is when you have no choice, when it's work or go hungry." "And who said I have a choice?" Emily shot back. "Who said I have an easy life? Do you think it's easy to live in a wheelchair? Do you think it's easy to be rejected by everyone and have to start life over from scratch? Emily's voice rose, and all the emotion of recent years came pouring out. The people around fell silent, surprised by the passion in her words. I didn't choose to be in this chair, but I chose not to give up. I chose to work, to contribute, to be useful instead of feeling sorry for what I lost. And if that bothers you, that's your problem, not mine. Marcus was speechless. He hadn't expected such a strong and sincere reaction. Some people in the crowd began to murmur approval. The girl is right, said an elderly lady. Every honest job deserves respect. It's true, agreed another, and these products look great. From that moment on, sales improved significantly. People began to approach not only to buy, but to talk with Emily and learn her story. Many were impressed by her determination and willingness to work. By the end of the day, they had sold almost everything. The money raised wasn't much, but it symbolized far more than its monetary value. It was proof that Emily could be productive, useful, respected. How do you feel? Jack asked on the way back home. Tired but happy, very happy. I think today you proved something, not just to others but to yourself. I proved I'm not useless, that I can work and support myself. I always knew that. I was just waiting for you to discover it too. That night they talked late into the night about plans to expand the garden, what new products to plant, how to improve the presentation at the market. It was the first time they spoke as true partners, not just as two people trying to adapt to each other. But not everything would be easy. The following Monday, Richard showed up at their house with a grim expression. Emily, I need to speak with you. Alone. Jack looked at his wife, who nodded to show it was okay. He withdrew to the backyard, but stayed close enough to step in if needed. What did you do at the market on Saturday? Richard asked as soon as they were alone. I sold the produce from our garden. Why? Because the whole town is talking. They say you caused a scene, fought with the people there. I didn't cause any scene, I just defended myself when they tried to disrespect me. Emily, you're my daughter. You don't need to work selling vegetables at the market like some commoner. The phrase some commoner made Emily's blood boil. A commoner? Dad, I've discovered something. Working with dignity doesn't lower anyone. On the contrary, it uplifts. That's your husband's talk. He's filling your head with strange ideas. No, Dad, Jack is helping me discover who I really am. And you know what I've found? That I'm stronger than you ever made me believe. Emily, you've always been very sheltered. You don't know the hardships of real life. Sheltered? Dad, you offered me like merchandise to any man who would take me. How is that protection? Richard fell silent, clearly uncomfortable with the memory of that episode. I just wanted you to have a secure life. Secure for whom? For me or for you? Because the way things were, I was going to spend the rest of my life being a burden to everyone. You were never a burden. Yes, I was, Dad. And the worst part is, you made me believe that too. Until Jack showed me I could be different. Emily, I only want what's best for you. Then let me be happy in my own way. Let me work, feel useful, build something with my husband. Richard looked at his daughter for a long moment. There was a determination in her eyes he had never seen before. Perhaps it was indeed time to stop trying to protect her and start respecting her. All right, he said finally, but if this Jack makes you suffer, he'll have to answer to me. Dad, Jack is the only one who has never made me suffer. On the contrary, he gave me back the will to live. After Richard left, Jack came back inside the house. Is everything okay? He asked. Everything's great. I think my father finally understood I'm not a child anymore. And how do you feel about that? Free. For the first time in my life, I feel free. That night, for the first time since their marriage, Emily asked Jack to sleep in the same room as her. Are you sure? He asked. I am. We're husband and wife, and more importantly, we're partners. True partners. It was the first night they truly talked as a couple. Lying in the dark, they spoke about their fears, their dreams, their hopes for the future. Jack told more about his difficult childhood, about how he learned early on to value honest work and dignity. Emily spoke about her loneliness, about how she always felt like a stranger in her own family, about her dreams of having a purposeful life. "You know what impresses me most about you," said Emily. "What?" "You've never lied to me. From the first day, you've always been honest about what you expected, about what you felt. That's rare. My sister Lucy always said life is already too complicated for us to complicate it further with lies. She seemed like a special person. She was. You would have loved her, and she would have loved you. Why? Because you both have the same courage, the same strength to not give up even when everything seems impossible." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. It was the first time someone had compared her to a courageous person. In the weeks that followed, Emily and Jack's garden became the Saturday market's main attraction. Sales increased steadily, and they began receiving orders from restaurants in the region. The quality of the products and Emily's respectful service won them a loyal customer base. But success also brought new challenges. Other producers began showing hostility, claiming unfair competition. There was even an attempted sabotage when someone threw salt on the beds overnight, destroying part of the crop. "Who could have done this?" asked Emily, surveying the damage the next morning. "There are plenty of people who don't like seeing us prosper," replied Jack, trying to control his anger. "Are we going to start all over?" "Of course we are. We won't let others' envy destroy our work." It was in this moment of adversity that Emily showed a strength she didn't even know she had. Instead of being discouraged, she organized the replanting like a military operation. She made new calculations, rearranged the beds to make better use of the space, and even installed a taller fence around the garden. "Where did you find so much strength?" asked Mrs. Martha, who had come to help clean the damaged beds. "From knowing that I've finally found my place in the world, and no one is going to take that away from me." Emily's determination impressed not only Jack, but the entire community. People who had previously seen her as a spoiled rich girl began respecting her for her work and persistence. Mrs. Mary also began changing her opinion about her daughter-in-law. During one of her weekly visits to her son's house, she observed Emily working in the garden under the hot sun, her hands dirty with soil, completely focused on what she was doing. "Jack," she said when her son returned from work, "I think I was wrong about your wife." "What do you mean, Mother?" "I thought she was a weak girl who would give up at the first difficulty, but just look. The garden was sabotaged and she didn't even think about stopping. On the contrary, she's working even harder. Emily is stronger than she seems, Mother. I see that now. And I also see how happy you are. It's been a long time since I've seen you smile so much." It was true, Jack was noticeably happier. The marriage that had started as a practical arrangement was turning into something much deeper. He and Emily had found a rhythm of life that worked for both of them, a partnership based on mutual respect and common goals. 3 months after starting the garden, they had their first big surprise. A well-dressed man showed up at the market specifically looking for them. "Are you the owners of the St. Benedict Garden?" he asked, introducing himself as Charles Harrison, owner of a chain of restaurants in Atlanta. "Yes, we are," replied Emily. "How can we help you?" "I'm interested in forming a partnership. My restaurants work with high-quality organic ingredients, and your vegetables are exactly what I'm looking for." Charles's proposal was to place regular and significant orders, but this would require them to greatly expand production. It was an incredible opportunity, but also a daunting challenge. "We need to think about this," said Jack. "It's a very big commitment." "Of course, but I can mention that I'm willing to pay 40% above market price for guaranteed quality and regularity." That night, Emily and Jack stayed up late discussing the proposal. It was the chance to turn their small garden into a truly profitable business, but it would mean drastic changes in their lives. "Do you think we can do it?" asked Emily. "I think if we try alone, no, but if we can get help, maybe." "What kind of help?" "Other producers. Turn this into a cooperative, everyone working together, sharing the profits." The idea of creating a cooperative excited Emily. It would be a way to include other families in the region, create jobs, strengthen the entire community. "How do you start a cooperative?" she asked. "I don't know, but you can read and study these things better than I can. How about doing some research?" Emily spent the following days studying rural cooperatives. She found out it was possible, but required a lot of planning and organization. It also required something she wasn't sure she could achieve: convincing other producers to trust her. The first attempt was a disaster. Emily and Jack organized a meeting at the community school to present the cooperative idea. Only 5 people showed up, and the reception was cold. "With all due respect, Mrs. Emily," said John Baptist, a small producer from the area, "you don't understand anything about farming. You were born rich, never had any needs. How can we trust our livelihood to you?" "John," Jack intervened, "Emily works as hard as any of us. She works because she wants to, not because she has to. It's different." Emily listened to the criticisms in silence. She knew she had to earn those people's trust, and that wouldn't be easy. "You're right," she finally said. "I really don't know anything about farming compared to you, but I know management, I know how to do accounting, I know how to deal with customers, and I know that alone we won't be able to grow." "But why do you want to help us? What do you gain from it?" It was a fair question, and Emily thought carefully about her answer. "I gain the chance to be part of something bigger than myself. I gain the chance to prove I can truly contribute to this community, and I gain the chance to build a better future for my husband and me." Emily's honesty made an impact. People started asking more questions, becoming interested in the details of the proposal. They didn't leave convinced, but at least willing to listen more. "It was a start," Jack said on the way back home. "They don't trust me." "Not yet. But trust is built, and you've already planted the seed." Emily decided she needed to prove her value in a practical way. She started visiting the small properties in the region, offering free help with planning and organization. She used her management knowledge to help producers calculate costs, organize crops, plan sales. At first, many received her with suspicion, but gradually, as they saw practical results from her suggestions, they began to respect her. Emily discovered she had a natural talent for organization and that she really could contribute to improving those people's lives. The big turnaround came 6 months later. During an unexpected drought, many crops in the region were damaged. Emily organized a cooperation system where producers with wells shared water with those facing difficulties. She also coordinated a joint sales scheme so available products could be sold for better prices. "You saved our harvest," said John Baptist, the same one who had questioned her abilities at the first meeting. "I didn't save it alone. Everyone helped. I just organized. That's exactly why we need you. And the cooperative." The second meeting about the cooperative had 23 people present. This time the atmosphere was completely different. People came with practical questions, wanting to understand how it works, what their rights and duties would be. Emily had prepared meticulously. She had studied successful cases of cooperatives in other regions, prepared a detailed business plan, calculated profit projections. Her presentation was clear, objective, and convincing. "Each family keeps their property and their independence," and she explained. "The cooperative serves to organize joint sales, get better prices, share equipment, and supply costs. Everyone wins, nobody loses." "And who's going to run this cooperative?" asked a woman named Rose. "We'll elect a board. I'm volunteering to help with the administrative part, but only if you all want me to. And the profits, how will they be divided?" "Proportionally to what each one produces and delivers for joint sales. Those who produce more, earn more. Those who produce less, earn less. But everyone earns more than they would selling alone." By the end of the meeting, 16 families had signed a letter of intent to create the St. Benedict Rural Cooperative. It was the beginning of something that would change not only the lives of Emily and Jack, but of that entire community. But not everyone was happy with the developments. The following week, Richard showed up at his daughter's house with a worried expression. "Emily, I'm hearing things that don't please me." "What things, Dad?" "They say you're involved with this cooperative business, that you're meddling in other people's affairs." "I am helping to organize a cooperative, yes. What's the problem?" "The problem is that you're my daughter. This could affect my business." Emily looked at him without understanding. "What do you mean it could affect your business?" "Some farmers in the region are commenting that they don't like this story. They think it's a way for small producers to band together against the big ones." "Dad, this has nothing to do with big farmers. It's just small producers organizing to get better prices. I know that, but they don't see it that way. And that could create problems for me in the Producers Association. It was the first time Emily saw so clearly how economic interests could divide a community. Her father was worried that the success of the small producers might somehow threaten his position among the big farmers. And what do you want me to do? Give up helping these people? It's not that, daughter. It's just that maybe you could do it more discreetly. Dad, are you asking me to hide because my work bothers your rich friends? Emily, you don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. You're ashamed of having a daughter who works with small producers instead of staying home embroidering and receiving visitors. It's not shame. Then what is it? Because from my perspective, it looks a lot like shame. Jack, who had been listening to the conversation from the kitchen, decided to intervene. Mr. Richard, with all due respect, Emily is doing important work. She's helping families improve their lives. I don't see anything wrong with that. Jack, you don't understand how things work here. There's an order, a hierarchy. And where do Emily and I fit in this hierarchy? Asked Jack, his voice taking on a firmer tone. We're small producers too. Or are we worth less than others because she's your daughter? Richard fell silent, realizing he had put himself in a complicated situation. Dad, said Emily, you're going to have to choose between your farmer friends and your daughter, because I'm not going to stop doing what I believe is right just to avoid bothering people who never cared about me. It's not a matter of choosing. Yes, it is, and I hope you make the right choice. After Richard left, Emily and Jack talked about the situation. It was clear that the cooperative was creating tensions beyond what they had imagined. Do you regret it? Asked Jack. Not at all. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that really matters. If that bothers some people, that's their problem. It might get harder from here on out. I know. But I've been through difficult things before, and this time, I'm not alone. Jack smiled and held his wife's hand. No, you're not alone. You never will be again. The cooperative was officially founded 2 months later, in a simple ceremony at the community school. Emily Thompson was elected president unanimously, which left her both emotional and frightened at the same time. I hope I can live up to your trust, she said in her inaugural speech. If it weren't for you, we would never have gotten this far, replied John Baptist. We trust you because you've proven you deserve it. The cooperative's first months were challenging. There were disagreements over prices, discussions about product quality, and difficulties establishing delivery schedules. But Emily proved to be a competent and fair administrator, always finding solutions that benefited all the cooperative members. The contract with Charles Harrison's restaurant chain was signed and became the cooperative's financial anchor. With guaranteed sales and better prices, the families involved began to see a real improvement in their living conditions. My oldest daughter will be able to continue studying, Rose shared during a meeting. Before, she would have had to stop to work in the fields. I managed to repair my house's roof, said another member. I'd needed to for years, but there was never enough money. Hearing these accounts filled Emily with a satisfaction she had never experienced in her previous life of privilege. For the first time, she felt her work had a real purpose, that she was making a difference in real people's lives. But the cooperative's success also brought new problems. Some local merchants began complaining about the competition, claiming the cooperative's prices were unfair. There was pressure on the City Hall to create bureaucratic difficulties for the group. The situation reached its peak when a group of larger farmers, including some acquaintances of Richard, organized a meeting to discuss what they called the cooperative problem. These small producers are getting too full of themselves, said Frederick Peters, one of the region's most influential farmers. If we let them, they'll want to compete with us as equals. The problem isn't the small producers, Richard replied, surprising everyone. The problem is that we haven't organized our own businesses better. Richard, your daughter is behind this. She's the one who organized this cooperative. And I'm proud of her for it. For the first time in her life, she's found something that makes her happy and helps other people too. Richard's public defense of his daughter reached Emily's ears through Mrs. Martha, who learned about the meeting through contacts in town. "Your father defended you, girl," she told her. "Said he's proud of what you're doing." Emily was moved. After a lifetime feeling she'd disappointed her father, she had finally earned not just his respect, but his pride. The next day, Richard showed up at his daughter's house unannounced. "Dad, what a surprise," she said. "Is something wrong?" "I came to talk with you. I have a proposal." Jack and Emily exchanged curious glances. "What kind of proposal?" asked Jack. "I want to join the cooperative. Offer part of my land to expand production." The silence that followed was absolute. Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Dad, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. I've seen your work, I've seen the results, and I've realized something. The future of agriculture isn't in isolated large estates, it's in cooperation. But your farmer friends, they won't like this. Let them not like it. I've discovered something at 62. Other people's opinions are worth far less than my daughter's happiness." Emily rose from her wheelchair with effort and hugged her father for the first time in a long while. It was more than a reconciliation. It was the recognition that she had found her place in the world. Richard's entry into the cooperative was a milestone. With his land and equipment, production nearly doubled. But more important than that was the signal her joining gave to other producers in the region. If an established farmer like Richard Thompson believed in the cooperative, maybe it really was a good idea. In the following months, 12 more families joined the group. The St. Benedict Rural Cooperative became recognized as one of the most successful in the region. Emily received invitations to speak about cooperativism in other communities, becoming a reference on the subject. But not everything was rosy. The rapid growth brought new administrative challenges. There were disagreements about profit sharing, questions about Emily's decisions, attempts to form rival groups within the cooperative itself. The most difficult moment came when Joseph Carter, one of the oldest members, accused Emily of favoring some producers over others. "She gives more opportunities to her friends," Joseph said in meetings. "We who are simpler always come last." The accusations were unfounded, but created an atmosphere of distrust that threatened to destroy everything they had built. Emily was devastated. She had dedicated herself completely to the work in the cooperative, always trying to be fair to everyone, and seeing her integrity questioned was painful. "Maybe it's better if I step away," she told Jack one particularly difficult night. "If you step away, you'll prove they were right to question you. But if I stay, the divisions might get worse. Or you can prove you're above the gossip and continue doing the work you know how to do." Jack was right. Emily decided to face the situation head-on. She called an extraordinary assembly where she gave a detailed account of all her actions as president. She showed documents, spreadsheets, contracts, everything that proved her decisions had always been based on transparent and technical criteria. "If any of you have specific questions about my conduct, I'm here to clarify," she said at the end of the presentation. Joseph Carter tried to maintain his accusations, but couldn't present any concrete evidence. Other members who knew Emily's work better came to her defense. At the end of the meeting, a vote of confidence in the presidency was held. Emily received support from 80% of the members. "Thank you for your trust," she said, clearly emotional. "I promise to continue working so that everyone feels valued and respected here." That episode, although difficult, ended up strengthening Emily's leadership. She had proven she could face adversity and maintain the group's unity. The cooperative emerged from the crisis stronger and more cohesive. A year and a half after the cooperative's founding, Emily and Jack received news that would change their lives again. Charles Harrison, the restaurant businessman, proposed expanding the partnership by creating a distribution center in the region. "You've managed to prove you can produce with quality and regularity," he said during a meeting. "Now I want to expand the business, build a distribution center here, create jobs, transform this region into a reference for organic agriculture." The proposal was ambitious, a $2 million real investment to build modern processing, packaging, and distribution facilities. It would be necessary to expand the cooperative even further, involve producers from other towns in the region, and create a much more complex structure. "It's a huge responsibility," said Emily. We're talking about hundreds of families who will depend on this project's success. That's exactly why I need you, replied Charles. I need people who understand the region, who have the producer's trust, who know how to manage seriously. The decision to accept the proposal wasn't easy. Emily and Jack spent weeks discussing the pros and cons, consulting other members and studying the project's feasibility. It was a unique opportunity, but also a huge risk. What if it goes wrong? Asked Emily one night. What if it goes right? Replied Jack. How many people will have a better life? Jack's answer reminded her why she had fallen in love with him. Even in the face of uncertainty, he always chose the path of hope and generosity. Let's move forward, she decided. But this time, we'll do everything even more planned and organized. The following months were the most intense of Emily's life. She divided her time between supervising the construction of the distribution center, organizing the entry of new cooperative members, negotiating contracts with suppliers and clients, and managing the expectations of hundreds of people who depended on the project's success. They were months of 16-hour workdays, constant travel around the region, endless meetings. Jack took on a larger share of the cooperative's administrative responsibilities, so Emily could focus on the new project. You're working yourself to death, he said one night, watching her fall asleep on piles of documents at the kitchen table. It's just until the center is ready. Then we can hire people to help. Emily, there's no point in building an empire if you won't be alive to enjoy it. He was right. Emily had let herself be consumed by work and was neglecting other aspects of her life, including her relationship with her husband. They barely talked about anything other than work, hardly had any time alone together. I'm sorry, she said. I know I've been a bit absent. No need to apologize. You just need to remember that we're a team. You don't have to carry everything alone. That night, for the first time in months, they talked about things that had nothing to do with work. They talked about plans for the future, about how they felt about each other, about the possibility of having children. Do you want to have children? Asked Emily. I do. And you? I do too. But I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Of not being able to be a good mother because of the wheelchair. Jack held her face with both hands, forcing her to look him in the eyes. Emily, you transformed the lives of dozens of families. You created a cooperative from scratch. You're building a project that will benefit hundreds of people, and you think you can't be a good mother. It's different. Yes, it is different. It will be even more special because our children will grow up seeing that physical limitations don't stop anyone from doing great things. The conversation about children brought a new perspective to their relationship. They began planning not only their professional future, but also their personal one. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to dream of a family, something she had considered impossible since the accident. The distribution center was inaugurated in a ceremony attended by local authorities, producers from across the region, representatives from partner companies, and journalists from specialized media. For Emily, it was the culmination of 2 years of hard work. 3 years ago, I felt useless, without purpose, a burden to everyone, she said in her inauguration speech. Today, I coordinate a project involving 120 producer families and will generate over 200 direct jobs. It wasn't easy to get here, but it was possible because many people believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. Among those present was Mrs. Mary, who had become one of her daughter-in-law's biggest supporters. Jack, she said after the ceremony, you chose an extraordinary woman. I know, Mom. No, son, you don't know. You saved her life, but she also saved yours. I've never seen you so fulfilled, so happy. It was true. Jack had found in marriage not just a companion, but a partner who challenged him to grow, who valued his work, who built dreams alongside him. The arrangement that had begun so improvidently had transformed into a solid relationship based on respect, admiration, and true love. The success of the distribution center attracted national attention. Emily was invited to participate in conferences on cooperativism, give interviews to specialized magazines, and advise other similar projects. Her story of overcoming adversity and business success became an inspiration for other people with disabilities. But not everything was glorious. Growth also brought new problems and responsibilities. There were labor conflicts, difficulties with regulatory agencies, pressures from competitors who felt threatened by the cooperative's success. The most difficult moment came when a group of businessmen from Atlanta tried to buy the distribution center, offering a significant sum and promising to keep all jobs. "It's a tempting offer," said Charles Harrison. "They're offering 3 times what we invested." "But what about the producers and the cooperative?" asked Emily. "They promised to keep everything running as it is." Promises are easy to make and hard to keep. The decision on whether to sell divided the cooperative members. Some saw the opportunity to profit from the sale. Others feared losing control over their own destiny. The discussions were long and sometimes heated. "If we sell now, it'll give a good amount for everyone," argued Joseph Carter, the same one who had questioned Emily before. "It's guaranteed money." "But then we go back to being dependent on a boss," retorted John Baptist. "All the work we did to have our independence will have been in vain." Emily found herself in a difficult position. As president of the cooperative, she needed to consider what was best for the group of members, even if that meant giving up her own dreams and projects. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. After weeks of debates, a decisive assembly was scheduled to vote on the sale. Emily prepared a detailed presentation showing the advantages and disadvantages of each option without trying to influence the members' decision. "You need to decide based on what you think is best for your families and the future of the community," she said. "Whatever the decision, I will respect it and work to ensure the best possible outcome." The vote was close. 51 votes against the sale, 49 in favor. The margin was small, but enough to keep the project under the cooperative's control. "I think we made the right decision," said Jack after the assembly. "I hope so, because now the responsibility is even greater. If it goes wrong, it'll be our fault. And if it goes right, it'll be our merit too." Emily smiled. Once again, Jack managed to see the positive side of the most challenging situations. The months that followed were a consolidation of the project. With the decision not to sell, it was necessary to further professionalize the management, hire specialized consultants, invest in technology and training. Emily found herself having to learn about subjects she had never imagined: logistics, marketing, financial management, human resources. "Sometimes I feel like I'm studying for a new profession," she commented to Jack. "That's exactly what you're doing. And you're doing very well." It was true, Emily had developed leadership and management skills that she herself didn't know she possessed. The girl who had been raised to be merely a decorative wife had transformed into a competent and respected executive. 2 years after the distribution center's inauguration, Emily received a call that made her incredibly happy. She was pregnant. "Are you sure?" she asked the doctor. "Absolutely. 8 weeks along. Everything indicates a normal and healthy pregnancy." Emily left the doctor's office with tears of happiness in her eyes. She had dreamed of that moment, but had also feared it might not happen due to complications from the accident. "Jack," she said as soon as she got home, "I need to tell you something." "What is it? Is everything okay?" "It's better than okay. We're going to have a baby." Jack's reaction was pure joy. He lifted her from the wheelchair and spun her in the air, both laughing and crying at the same time. "I can't believe it. When?" "In about 7 months. A baby and our baby." That night they stayed up late making plans. How to organize work at the cooperative during the pregnancy, how to adapt the house for the child, what names to choose, what kind of education to give their son. "Will it be difficult? A mother in a wheelchair?" asked Emily. "It will be different, but not difficult. And our son will grow up knowing that limitations don't define a person." Emily's pregnancy was closely followed by the entire community. The women at the cooperative took turns helping her with heavier tasks, the men mobilized to make necessary adaptations to the house, and the whole region was excited about meeting the president's baby. "I never thought I'd have so many stand-in grandmothers," Emily joked, referring to the affection with which the cooperative members cared for her. The pregnancy also brought reflection about the future. Emily knew she would need to delegate more responsibilities, prepare others to take on important roles in the cooperative. She could no longer be indispensable. She needed to build a structure that would function even without her constant presence. "It's time to train new leaders," she said during a board meeting. "The cooperative can't depend on just one person." Thus began a process of training new staff. Young people from the region were trained in administration, accounting, and project management. Women who had never had leadership opportunities were encouraged to take on responsibilities. It was as if Emily was planting seeds for the cooperative's future. Luke Miller was born on a sunny March morning, weighing 3.5 kilos, with dark eyes like his father and brown hair like his mother. For Emily, it was the most emotional moment of her life. "He's perfect," she whispered, holding her son in her arms for the first time. "Just like his mother," replied Jack, kissing his wife's forehead. Luke's arrival brought profound changes to Emily and Jack's routine. She significantly reduced her workload at the cooperative, passing more responsibilities to the team she had trained. She discovered it was possible to trust others and that the cooperative could function well even without her constant supervision. "I think that's what was missing," she commented to Mrs. Martha, who had become a sort of grandmother to the baby. "I needed to learn to let go of control." That's what every mother needs to learn, dear. First with projects, then with children. The first months of motherhood were challenging but also rewarding. Emily found she could care for Luke perfectly well, adapting parenting techniques to her reality. The wheelchair was not an obstacle. It was just a characteristic that required some creative adaptations. When Luke turned 6 months old, Emily gradually began to resume her activities at the cooperative. But now her focus was different. Instead of trying to control everything personally, she focused on strategic planning and people development. "You've changed," observed Charles Harrison during a meeting. "How so?" "You're calmer, more confident, less anxious to control every detail." "Motherhood teaches us to focus on what truly matters," she replied. What truly mattered, Emily had discovered, wasn't just professional success or public recognition. It was the possibility of contributing to something greater than herself, of making a difference in other people's lives, of building a legacy that would last beyond her own lifetime. 5 years after the cooperative's founding, it had transformed into a model organization, studied by universities and replicated in other regions. Emily received numerous honors and awards, but what made her proudest was the success of the families involved in the project. "You know what makes me happiest?" she said to Jack one evening, watching Luke playing in the yard with other children from the cooperative. "What?" "Knowing that these children will grow up with opportunities their parents never had, that they'll be able to study, choose their professions, fulfill their dreams, and that they'll have as an example a woman who proved there are no limitations for those with determination." Emily looked at him affectionately. After 5 years of marriage, her relationship with Jack had evolved from a practical arrangement to a deep and genuine love. Together they had built not just a family, but a life with purpose and meaning. "You know what I was thinking?" she said. "What?" "Maybe it's time we had another child." "Another child, are you sure?" "I am. Luke needs a little brother or sister, and I want to give him the experience of a large family that I never had." Jack smiled. Once again, Emily surprised him with her ability to dream big and turn dreams into reality. "Then let's have another child," he said, kissing her. 6 months later, Emily was pregnant again. This time, it was a girl. They decided to name her Lucy, after Jack's sister. The second pregnancy was calmer than the first. Emily already knew what to expect. The cooperative was running well with shared management, and Luke was excited about the prospect of having a little sister. "I'll teach her how to walk," the 4-year-old boy would say, not yet understanding that his mother didn't walk, not because she didn't know how, but because she couldn't. "You'll teach her many things," Emily would reply, "and she'll teach you many things too." Lucy was born on a winter morning, a small but healthy girl with her mother's delicate features and her father's calm temperament. For Emily, it was confirmation that she had built the family she had always dreamed of having. "Now where for?" said Jack, looking at the family gathered in the hospital room. 4, but not alone. We have a whole community that's our family too. It was true. The cooperative had transformed into a large, extended family where everyone looked out for each other, where one person's success was celebrated by all, where difficulties were faced together. 10 years after that humiliating afternoon, when she had been offered as a prize to the first man who would accept her, Emily Miller had become one of the most respected people in the region, not because she was born rich, but because she had built something valuable with her own work and dedication. St. Benedict Farm, which had once been just a traditional rural property, had transformed into the center of a cooperative project, involving more than 300 families and generating thousands of direct and indirect jobs. The distribution center had expanded its operations and now served customers in 3 states. But what made Emily proudest wasn't the numbers or the recognitions. It was knowing she had proven to herself and to the world that a person in a wheelchair could not only have a full life, but also significantly contribute to the lives of others. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if those men hadn't rejected me that day, she commented to Jack one evening, watching their children sleep. You would never have discovered what you're capable of. And I wouldn't have discovered what true love is either. Nor I, Jack replied. Because even though I fell in love with you first through observation, it was by living with you that I discovered real love isn't just attraction or passion. It's admiration, it's partnership, it's building dreams together. Emily smiled. She had begun her adult life feeling like a burden, a weight nobody wanted to carry. She ended up discovering she was a natural leader, a competent manager, a beloved wife, and a dedicated mother. Do you know the difference between how I see myself now and how I saw myself before? She asked. What? Before, I defined myself by what I couldn't do. Now, I define myself by what I can do, and I've discovered I can do much more than I ever imagined. Emily's transformation was the subject of a book written by a journalist who followed her journey. The book became a bestseller and inspired other people with disabilities to pursue their dreams and challenge limits imposed by society. You became a writer without writing, Jack joked when the book was released. I became an example without trying to be one, she replied. Sometimes life surprises us in ways we never imagined. 15 years after their marriage, Emily and Jack had built not only a prosperous life, but a story of love and overcoming that inspired the entire community. Luke, now 10 years old, and Lucy, 5, grew up seeing in their mother an example that determination and hard work can overcome any obstacle. "Mommy," Luke asked one day, "why do you use a wheelchair?" It was the first time he had asked this question directly. Emily had prepared for this moment for years. "Because I had an accident when I was young. But you know what I discovered? The wheelchair doesn't define who I am. It's just how I move." "Are you sad about being in the chair?" "No, son. At first I was sad, because I thought I wouldn't be able to do the things I wanted. But I learned I can do everything I want, just in a different way." "Do you teach other people how to do things even when they're in a wheelchair?" "I do. And not just for people who use wheelchairs. I teach anyone who thinks they can't achieve their dreams because of some difficulty." Luke nodded, satisfied with the answer. To him, his mother was simply an extraordinary person who did amazing things. The wheelchair was just a detail. The conversation with her son made Emily reflect on her journey. She had started out seeing herself as diminished, limited, less valuable. She ended up becoming a leader, a reference, a person others admired and respected. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been a long process, with ups and downs, moments of doubt and moments of confidence. But the key had been finding people who believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. "Jack," she said one night, lying in bed after a long day of work. He replied, half asleep. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me the chance to discover who I really was." "You gave yourself that chance. I just offered support." "You offered much more than support. You offered respect, trust, true love. Without that, I never would have made it." Jack held her tighter. He too had transformed over those years. The simple and humble man who had agreed to marry the farmer's daughter had become a competent manager, a dedicated father, and a husband who knew how to value his wife's strength and intelligence. "Do you know what impresses me most about you?" he said. "What?" "That you never let anger or bitterness take over. You always focused on building, not destroying. I learned that holding on to grudges only hurts ourselves. I preferred to use my energy to create good things." It was true. Emily could have become a bitter person, resentful of life, full of grievances. Instead, she chose to use her difficulties as fuel to help others, turning pain into purpose. At 40 years old, Emily Miller was recognized as one of the most important business leaders in the region. Her cooperative was studied in universities, replicated in other communities, and cited as an example of success in books and academic articles. But for her, the greatest success wasn't professional, it was personal. It was having built a loving family, having contributed to the well-being of hundreds of other families, having proven that physical limitations don't determine a person's worth. "If you could go back in time and change something, would you?" A young journalist asked her during an interview. "Would I change the accident? I don't know. The accident brought me a lot of pain, but it also led me to discover things about myself that I might never have discovered. It led me to Jack. It led me to the cooperative. It led me to this life that I love." "So you have no regrets?" "I regret having wasted so much time thinking I was useless. If I could change something, it would be this. I would have started believing in myself earlier." Emily's answer went viral on social media, inspiring thousands of people facing their own difficulties. She received hundreds of messages from people telling how her story had motivated them not to give up on their dreams. "You've become an influencer," joked Lucy, who at 12 already mastered the language of social media. "A good influencer, I hope," replied Emily. "If my story can help other people believe in themselves, then everything I went through was worth it." Emily's legacy extended far beyond the cooperative. She had created a scholarship program for young people in the region, funded professional training courses, and supported social inclusion projects. Her work had transformed not only her own life, but the life of an entire community. "Mum," said Luke one night, now 15, "I want to work at the cooperative when I grow up." "Are you sure? You can do anything you want, study medicine, engineering, law." "I can, but I want to continue the work you started. I want to help the families in the region like you do." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. Seeing her son choose to carry on her work was the greatest recognition she could receive. "Then you'll have to study a lot. Administration, economics, cooperative management. You have to prepare to take on big responsibilities. I'll study everything necessary. And will you teach me? I'll teach you everything I know, and you'll learn much more than I did, because you'll start from a much more advanced point." The conversation with Luke made Emily think about succession. Not that she was thinking about retiring. At 40, she felt at the peak of her productive capacity. But it was important to prepare the next generation to continue the work. She then began a systematic program to train young leaders, not only her children, but young people from across the region who showed interest and ability to work with cooperatives and community development. "My goal isn't to be irreplaceable," she explained during a lecture at a university. "My goal is to create conditions for the work to continue and expand, even when I'm no longer here." 20 years after that humiliating afternoon on the farm's porch, Emily Miller had become one of the most respected and admired people in rural Georgia. Her story was told as an example of overcoming adversity. Her cooperative was a model of business and social success. Her family was an example of love and unity. But what made her proudest was knowing she had transformed her own pain into strength to help others. That she had proven to herself and to the world that a person's worth isn't measured by their limitations but by their achievements. "Do you know the greatest lesson I've learned in all these years?" she said to Jack one night, celebrating 20 years of marriage. "What?" "That life doesn't give us what we deserve. Not always. Sometimes it gives us things we didn't expect, didn't ask for, didn't want. But what we do with those things is what defines who we are. And you did extraordinary things. We did. Because none of this would have been possible if you hadn't believed in me when no one else did. Jack kissed her gently. After 20 years, the love between them had only grown and deepened. They had built much more than a marriage. They had built a true partnership, a life with purpose, a legacy that would last generations. End of story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of Emily's journey? Do you believe she made the right decisions throughout her life? Tell us in the comments which part of the story moved you the most, and if you know someone who, like Emily, turned difficulties into opportunities. Your like and subscription to the channel help us a lot to continue bringing inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for your company in this exciting story of overcoming and love.